Hello, good afternoon. Welcome. The Entrepreneurial Studies program sponsors the speaker series, and I am so excited to invite business owners in our community who some of them I've observed from afar, some of them I know very well. Happy to have them here today, come speak with all of you about their small business and how they started, how they grew it, how it's thriving and doing well today. We are so excited to have business owner Adam Cohn, owner of Skate Dogs, join us. So Adam, I want to start just with, how long have you been in business?
It's going on 17 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I met Adam, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, when his mobile skate park came to a school where my kids were. And they had skate dogs I believe it was Thursday afternoon. And I got to know him, and my kids got to learn how to skate, and it was a great experience. So I want you to start by talking a little bit about your business concept. How did it become reality?
Yeah. So I went to San Diego State University and I was studying business. And on my summer breaks, I would come back home to Huntington Beach, where I was living at the time. And one summer, I got a job at a skateboard shop and surf shop in Huntington Beach on Main Street. And I was selling skateboards and surfboards, and kids would come in and they would say, do you know how to do an ollie? Do you know how to do a kickflip? And I would say, yeah, I do. And they would say, well, can you show me? And I'd say, yeah, I could show you. So I'd start showing them tricks right at the skate shop. And then they'd say, hey, can you teach me? And I was like, a bell kind of went off in my head. I was like, well, yeah, I can teach you. So at this time, this was in 1999, so a long time ago. So
Mhm.
I put down a pad of paper and a pen, and I said, write down your name. I'll talk to your parents later, and if they're okay with it, I'll come over to your house and I'll give you a skateboarding lesson. So now I'm just thinking about all my business classes and stuff and what I've learned. I was like, let's see if I could try to put this into real life. So I started calling some parents and some kids, and parents and kids were all over it. They're like, yes, I want you to come out to my house. I want my kid to do a lesson. At the time at the skate shop, minimum wage, I don't remember what it was back then, but I'll guess maybe $5-6 an hour. And I was like, oh, what can I charge for now for a skate lesson? So I don't even remember what I was charging, but it was probably like $20, which was way more than I was making at the skate shop. So
Yeah.
this is great. I'm doing the skate shop. I'm getting business right out of there, and
Mhm.
and I'm making more, and I'm outdoors and doing what I love, and kids were liking it. I even made T-shirts. I bought the domain
Mhm.
name skatedogs.com because someone told me I should. I didn't really know what that was at the time.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, I had so much interest in skateboarding lessons. It was great for parents because they're getting their kids outdoors, doing something that they love, and it's also like daycare, So I'm kind of watching them for that hour too. And the kids just love it because they have like an older kid who's good at skateboarding, and there's mentorship and stuff like that, and they're learning tricks. So at this point, I was like, wow, this could be a real business. And I told my parents, like, I think I want to quit college and just do like skate dogs. I just want to do skateboarding lessons because I see the demand there. Parents are loving it, kids are loving it, I'm loving it. And they're like, okay, wait, let's hit the brakes. So we had like an emergency lunch meeting with my dad and my brother. My brother was at USC at the time, doing the entrepreneur program over there. And
Oh, okay.
they said, like, hit the brakes, don't drop out of school. Like, do it if you want. It sounds like a fun idea and a good idea, but like, do it, at the same time as you're finishing your degree. So I was kind of resistant at the time, but I listened to their advice, and I was like, okay, I'll go back to San Diego State where I was, going to school. And I tried to do it there when summer was over. And I quickly realized that it wasn't really like a family area. It was, a
Okay.
college town. And so I put up some flyers and stuff to do these private lessons, and no one was calling. And I was like, okay, well, maybe, let's just put it on the back burner, and, I'll pick it up on my next summer break or something. But basically at that point in 99, it kind of just stopped. I finished up with school. I got really busy, finishing up. So now I'm in the last 2 years getting the degree. It got, even harder and more time, I had to put into that. So I basically just put it on the shelf. I kept on buying skatedogs.com though. Every year I would pay for it. I never put up a website, but I kept on paying for the domain name. So then I graduated, 2001. I got my degrey, and I just got into the mortgage business. It was really hot at the time. I had a degree in marketing, but there really wasn't a lot of marketing jobs out there. So I ended up, my friends who didn't go to college were working at a mortgage company, and they said, just come over here and work. Trust me, it's you could do well. There's a career path. And so I ended up doing it, and I started at the bottom actually at this company, and I was telemarketing, with a college degree. And most people in there were just kind of, no college degree, just, filling hours. But I ended up working my way up in this company for about 6 years, 7 years, and became a manager. Still skateboarded, still loved it, but it didn't have enough time for it. I was just kind of doing, more adult stuff. But at 2007, in 2006, I started to realize things were changing in the mortgage industry, and things were slowing down. So I thought, okay, I better figure out a plan, because I don't think there's going to be enough business working for a company in the mortgage business. I better start my own mortgage business. So I became a business owner then and started a mortgage brokerage company in 2007, which I figured, okay, if I'm doing, 7, 8 loans at this company, now I could just do 1 or 2 loans on my own company and still make the same amount of money, and I'll be good. What I didn't know was coming was a huge recession and crash. So 2007, I went self-employed, and I basically did like 1 loan, 2 loans, and the whole year. And I was basically unemployed for about a year. But I was smart. I saved my money. So a lot of my friends were, buying all these fancy cars and stuff. And so they were in a lot of trouble. And I pretty much, I lived pretty modestly. So I saved a lot of money. So although I wasn't doing loans, I had some money, that I could just kind of live off until I figured out what I wanted to do. So now I'm like really slow. My girlfriend at the time was like, why don't you go do skateboarding lessons again? And I was like, well, I don't think I could really make a business out of it. And she's like, just try it. Like, you have nothing to lose. You're not working anyway, and you loved it so much. Like, maybe you can. You never know. So I was like, all right, I'll give it a try. So I put an ad out in the paper. Now so now it's 2008 in the summer, or actually springtime, and basically nobody calls. I don't get any business for private lessons. So I'm like, okay. But actually I did get 1 call. So I got a call from a guy named Fred who works with the city of Long Beach. He contracts with them, and he does concession stands, like for down by the beach. He runs their operations, and he runs the college baseball field operations. And he's like, we should do a skateboarding event at one of my events here. And I was like, okay. So he's like, do you want to meet for lunch? And I was like, sure, let's meet for lunch and talk. So ended up being a great guy and a mentor for me. We didn't end up doing a skateboarding event, but he just was one of those guys that was just really community oriented, and just kind of set the tone of what it takes to be a business owner and what to focus on, and that kind of thing. So we didn't really end up work together, but we just stayed in touch. And he ended up later down the road giving me a lot of advice and tips, and his web guy and this kind of stuff. But he did say, call this lady at the city of Long Beach and see if you could work out on some skateboarding lessons to the city of Long Beach. So I called this person over and over again for weeks. And she finally agrees to take a meeting, and she's like, yeah, this sounds really cool. I'll get back to you. Maybe we could do some skateboarding something. And I was like, great. And I never really heard from her. So now I'm like really discouraged with the skateboarding business. And now I'm like, okay, what else can I do? So one day I was outside my house, and my neighbor was out there, and we were just like, hey, chatting it up. And he's like, I told him kind of where I was at. And he said, call the city of Los Alamitos. There's tons of kids there. They love their sports there, and just give them a call and see if you could do something in that city. So I was like, okay. So I called the city, and I told them what I wanted to do. And they're like, oh yeah, that's the contract class department. And I was like, the what? I had no idea what that even was at the time. Mm-hmm. So I end up talking to this lady, Shelly Roper, who's at the contract class department, which is basically all they do is work with companies like me. before I was a company, they work with tons of vendors, soccer, karate, and they just want to fill, activities through the recreation department. And at the time I had no kids. I was never really into sports as a kid. I was more a surfer, skateboarder, snowboarder. So I didn't know any of this part of the industry. So she says, write a description. And she's like, don't do a private lesson. She's like, let's do a camp. She said, let's do a summer camp. She's like, write a description, send it over. We're about to print our catalog, but send it over and we'll print it out and we'll see if you get any signups. So sure enough, I did that. And we were going to offer 3 weeks of camp summer. And we had to actually add extra weeks of camp because it filled fast. So
fantastic.
Yeah. So that's kind of where it all began. At that point, I had to buy the ramps. I waited to see if anyone was going to sign up first. So I bought a few ramps. I didn't even have an SUV at the time. So now we have mobile skateboard parks. So that's the business. At the time, I had to borrow my mom's Ford Explorer and bring the ramps over there. And so it did great. And then at that point, I was like, okay, let's see if we could make a business out of this full time. And I started calling other cities and just kept on building, the parks through Parks and Recreation, offering summer camps and then after school classes. And then people started asking about private lessons again, now that we had a reputation, and then also birthday parties and those kinds of things. So the business was going pretty good for a couple of years. I was just running the one mobile skate park, but all through Parks and Rec. And business was good. I was excited. There were a lot of people were signing up, but it wasn't great through the school year. So we're very busy. But the school year, it was hard to, really fill those classes Monday through Friday. So after a couple of years, now I'm kind of thinking like, is this a real business? Can I scale it? I don't know. So one of my classes, it was in a camp in Los Alamitos. She said, I run after school programs for this school called Naples Elementary School in Long Beach. You should do a skateboarding program at my child's school. And I run the program there. So I'd love to have you. And I said, you know what? I was a kid skateboarding at schools, and all I did was get kicked out of schools on my skateboard. So I doubt you guys, the district's going to let us do a skateboarding program. But if you want to try and ask them, go for it and see what they say. Sure enough, they said, yeah, we could do an after-school skateboarding program at our Long Beach, Unified School District. And that's when things really changed, because it's a huge thing for parents, because a lot of them are working. Both parents work. They can't get the kid over to the Parks and Rec class at 3:30 or 4 o'clock because they're still working. And even if they can do it, they don't necessarily want to do it because it's a drive and this and that. But to offer a program right at the child's school was great for them, because parents really want to keep their kids active, and it's super convenient for them. So after I picked up that school, now I was like, okay, now I could really scale it. So over the next several years, I just kept on adding schools and adding mobile skate parks. And now we're up to, 5 mobile skate parks that we're running.
Wow, fantastic. That is a fantastic story.
Thank you.
There's a lot there. Having a mentor sounds like it really helped you. And getting connected with the right person, sounds like it wasn't a straight path. It kind of took some twists and turns, but finding the right path, the one school complemented what you were already doing on the off season.
Right.
Filling a gap for parents is definitely something that adds value, because as a working parent, that after school gap is hard. From between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock, it's hard. And when there's an activity there, you've done a couple things. You have allowed the kid not to be babysat, because I don't think that's not a cool thing to do. And you have an activity, you're not babysitters, it's which is great. So there's a lot of value that you have added, which is just so exciting. Did you have, in this process of developing your business, did you have any fear? Was there ever a time when you said, hey, this is just not going, it's just not going to work out? We sometimes call this imposter syndrome.
Right.
Maybe I don't feel like I have the credentials, the experience, the right equipment. I don't have an SUV yet, whatever it is. How do you overcome that?
Yeah, most of it, I would say, I'm an extremely hard worker,
Okay.
So I kind of even when I was doing the home loans, I kind of thought that if I just work harder than everybody, that I'll be okay. But yeah, it was one challenge and one thing with this business is, especially at the time, there wasn't a roadmap for it. So I was constantly thinking, like, am I doing the right thing here? How much should I charge? What should be the refund policy, the makeup policy? And it was just, it was like, I kept on thinking, like, should I be running a business? Do I have what it takes to do it? So yeah, along the way, there was a lot of self-doubt. And I think what got me through it was just putting in the time, and just doing my best to just research and see what other companies are doing, and just figuring it out.
You have a lot of grit and perseverance is what it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, I get that from skateboarding too, because I mean,
Okay.
skateboarding is all about falling, so I even tell the kids now, like, you got to be willing to fall, because that's how you learn. You have to be willing to take a few falls before you make.
Yeah.
I even tell them, kind of jokingly, but it's also true. Like, there's a trick I've been working on for like 25 years and still haven't landed it. So it's like, and these kids try to do the trick, after 2 minutes. I'm like, look, I've been working on the trick for years and still haven't did it. Like, it's just, you're gonna fall, and one day you're gonna get it. But that's when it's gonna feel that much sweeter, because it took, that much work to get it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you have competition?
Yeah, there are a lot of skateboarding camps, but most of them are at a skate park.
Okay.
So there's not too many around Southern California. There's a couple sleepaway camps. There's one in Tehachapi, which is a sleepaway. It's called Board, and they do skate, surf, everything. And then there's some of the local skate parks here offer classes, but nobody's really doing. There's a couple places doing mobile, but they actually in the last couple of years phased out. There's a lot of competition, obviously, in recreation and other activities. Any people that we work with, they have a lot of other programming there. But that's actually, we'll probably touch on it later, but that's kind of a cool part of this line of work, is everyone's kind of friendly with each other, because even the other programs, there's just enough activities where the kid, we don't need to, have this kid and just keep them only as our customer, because we know they're going to try other stuff too. So everyone's really friendly. Everyone's willing to give each other advice and that kind of thing.
Do you compete with the soccer camp after school or the basketball program after school?
Not really, because most schools, they offer just one program.
Okay.
So, skateboarding, like, for example, the school that your child did, it was always our Thursday. It's still our Thursday class. So the school typically doesn't do another sports. They might do another program, like maybe like foreign language or something like that. That's kind of a different thing. But normally, like, they'll do basketball on a different day. So a lot of the parents, like my parents, actually go to the same school, that we were talking about. And most parents, including myself, I want my child to do anything that comes their way. So like, if they're offering a program, a garden program, I'll just like do it Monday through Friday. Let's put you in whatever we can. So
yeah,
there's not really too much competition there.
That makes sense. Okay. What advice? So our audience is a variety of students from El Camino College. Some of them business students, some of them pursuing their own venture, some of them not, collecting new information. What advice would you give those who are interested in starting a business but don't have their path figured out yet? Much like you, it took a while. It took some looking around. The industry changed, the economy changed, and we haven't even talked about COVID yet.
Yeah.
What advice do you give people that have an idea or are looking to fine tune their idea to help get them started?
Yeah. So I would say the number one thing is to find something that you're passionate about. I know it's cliche to say that, but I really believe that. So that's the most important thing. Find something that you really love to do. And then the other part of it, I would say, is a lot of people, I think, especially in this day and age, they're looking for like a get rich quick kind of thing. And I think whether it's, skateboarding business or any business, it just takes time. It takes a lot of time because things like word of mouth, when you're starting off, there's zero word of mouth. Um, but if you offer something that's really great, people are going to talk, especially in my line of work, because all the parents, they all have kids and they're all looking for fun activities. So they're going to tell you one way or the other if they like it or not. So you got to make sure you're really offering a great program, in my case. But that takes time, to build that up. And then even for even thinking about like siblings, I have a child, that someone has a child that does skate dogs, and then now they have a second child 3 years down the road. So now it's like, that took 3 years just to capitalize on that second,
Right.
moment. So I think you just have to be willing to really work hard, and know that it's going to pay off, but you might not see it right away. So
Yeah.
me, it's like, doing the free events, going to the school and doing the demo. I'm not getting paid to do it. But I know, down the road, it's going to, hopefully turn into business and those kinds of things. So it's just putting in the hard work, I would say, is my number one advice, and knowing it's going to take time.
So true. So the demo that you mentioned, my understanding is you go to schools to show what your program is all about. The school doesn't compensate you for that, but it sounds like that's marketing.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how you came to use that avenue so that parents knew about you and what you offer.
Yeah. So two things for us, and I think for a lot of others, athletic programs. Well, one is a trial class, which can be hard to do at a school. So we'll do that if it's at like a smaller private school. But at a big public school, it's really hard because, you might have to staff. I might have to have, 5 instructors, 6 instructors that I just don't have to be able to offer a good class there. But a great way to do it that we found is the demos. So, a kid sees a flyer and, they're gonna be like, oh, and they not even look at it, the flyer. But we do put them out when we can. We'll put those things out too, but it doesn't really speak to them so much. So if you're, what we do is we do it during lunch. So we're not taking away from, school time. So they're all playing anyway. And we'll do a show. It's usually me on a bullhorn, and I'll bring one of my skaters out there, and we're just doing really cool tricks, like we're maybe jumping over me or jumping over the principal, ollie, what we call it, and just talking about the class. And now the kid, obviously they see us having fun, we're they're going fast and jumping and stuff. So they're like thinking, oh, I want to do that. But then they can see the ramps, and they see that these ramps, a lot of times kids are, intimidated. They see skateboarding on TV and they might think it's a 12-foot ramp, and they're like, no way, I'm doing that. So we bring out our 1-foot ramp, and we describe it, and we'll show them, oh, this is what we're going to start you off on. And then now they're like, oh, okay, I can do that, and then with the trial, especially when they, have all that self-doubt about, them falling, them getting hurt, not being able to do it, but then actually be able to do it, then it's like, wow, I was able to do it and I want more of that. So that's been a great marketing tool for us, those two, the trials or the demos.
Yeah, excellent. So a couple of people, so for the students out there, you're welcome to enter any questions you have into the Q&A box, and we'll go through those as time allows. Speaking of demonstration and marketing and how that speaks louder than a flyer, there's a couple questions about your website and social media advertising. Can you give us your website so people can look you up? There's also, I was looking at earlier, a very cool video that you created on your website that explains exactly what you do. And can you also give us your Instagram or Facebook handle or address so that people can connect with you?
Yeah, so everything is Skate Dogs. So the website skatedogs.com, and then the Facebook and the Instagram just at Skate Dogs. One word, SKATEDOGS, not spelled fancy, just regular way. And yeah, you'll see all the different videos on there, all the pictures, all the special events we do. Social media has been it's a good tool. It's kind of interesting tool because, what we're doing with our social media is we're targeting parents. So they're not our customer though. Our customer is kids. So kind of a unique thing. If some other people that I know that are in skateboarding industry, when when Instagram was on the newer side and they were trying to target teens and young adults, I was like, spend a lot of money on Instagram advertising because you're going to get your customer. And then for us, it's like, okay, you got to appeal to parents and kids. So it's kind of a tricky situation there. So I don't really spend a lot of money on social media, but we do have it out there. And once in a while, I'll do like a boosted, ad, like for a summer camp or something like that. I'll put just a regular post and I'll have it boosted, through Facebook or Instagram. But it is a great way to find coaches because I got that tip from my wife, actually. She's like, skaters love Instagram. They're always posting their videos and stuff. I'm sure there are a lot. So that's been a great tool. If I put a post out there, I might get, 5-10 interested skateboarders that want
to recruit. Yeah. Because Facebook is like the parent generation, maybe.
Yeah.
And Instagram, these kids are too young for that.
Yeah.
Hopefully they don't have cell phones and they're on
Right.
Instagram at those ages. But yeah, the sweet spot is recruitment.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Okay. So we have a question from Brandon. He loves your inspiring story and he sees your mobile park at Marine Park. I think that's Manhattan Beach.
Yeah.
Our neck of the woods. His question is about building the company. So we talk about legal forms of business and when we talk about entrepreneurship, he wants to know, is it just yourself, like the sole proprietorship? Do you have a partner?
Yeah.
How are you formed?
So when I started, as I mentioned, in 2007, I started a mortgage brokerage company. So at that time, my advice was start a C Corp for the mortgage business. So now I have my mortgage business that I mentioned. I wasn't really doing any loans, but I still wanted to keep my license active. So at that time, my accountant said, just file a DBA doing business as Skate Dogs. So this way, if you have any loan business coming in, you could do it under that company. Or if you have any skateboard, income come in, if you're lucky enough to, you could do it under Skate Dogs. So, and actually, I still have it kind of formatted that same way. So the corporation name is under a different name, but it's all the business is under Skate Dogs. So
you have a conventional corporation with a DBA to cover this part of the business, which also gives you protection for liability.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why I did it. So I think initially it was, more if there's any issues with the mortgage business, C Corp offers the most protection. And then it just kind of carried right into, Skate Dogs with the skateboarding business.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. Stephanie is asking, how did your business model change? The big question always is post-COVID. Did you change? How did you adapt to the changes in demand for those years and kind of bounce back after the air cleared?
Yeah. So COVID was kind of an interesting roller coaster for us. Initially, we got shut down completely for, I think it was 3 or 4 months. And at that time, I started doing some virtual lessons, which was kind of fun, kind of interesting. I would do it on my driveway and I'd do like a 1-hour lesson and like, through a video conference kind of thing. And for a couple of families, it was actually great because they really enjoyed it and they really needed it, but it just didn't translate too well. And I don't think people were, that interested in doing skateboarding lessons that way. I think at that time, parents were just like, just go outdoors and do your own thing. So I did a little bit of that, but then what happened was pretty interesting. We were an outdoor program. Everything we do outdoors. And a lot of, half of the programs out there are indoors for kids. So like the gym or some of these indoor soccer places or whatever, they still had all these restrictions. So they couldn't really operate at full capacity. Well, we could because we were outdoors. So we actually had a huge boom after things started to open up. Parents were just wanting to get their kids outdoors and do anything they want to do to socialize with other kids in a safe way. Think about how I still kind of just think about what kind of, different restrictions we had when we were doing our programs. We put X's on the ground where the kids could stand so they were 6 foot apart in the line. If a kid put their hand on a ramp, we would sanitize it. We had sanitizer on our hands. If we hold their hands down a ramp, we'd all sanitize our hands. So we did it like, I was really safe about it. Everyone was wearing masks, even outdoors. So the business was actually doing great there for a while. And then because a lot of the other programs were shut down still because they were indoors.
Sure.
And then what I started doing is they still had, at that time, a lot of restrictions on how many participants you could have. So, but you could still do them back to back. So we would do like a group of whatever it was, I think 14 students in the morning. And then we'd have, like, we started adding programming actually. So we'd do like a 9 to noon, one camp, and then maybe like a 1 to 4. And so but we were still not allowed at schools. So for a while, for a couple of years, we still, all after school programs were closed. So what we did is we actually, we rented out a big container, started, so we still kind of have it. We do a lot of programming there. And we just started running all of our programs in Long Beach out of this one church parking lot that we rented out. And so at this time I was thinking, wow, and I got all these new ramps. It was actually kind of cool because our mobile skate parks are, they're small trailers or small, or, average size vans. So you're kind of restricted on what kind of ramps you can put in there. But with this big container, it's like 40 feet long or something, you could have way more ramps and bigger. Sure. So we made like a headquarters out of there, and we put in like a little half pipe and bigger ramps and better ramps and all these new things. And it was really cool. And we were filling it up pretty much Monday through Saturday over there. Wow. Yeah. And that point I was like, okay, so the nice thing about programming there and not working with schools is logistically, it's a lot easier because you don't have to deal with the school office. You don't have to, the marketing was just, through like our email list and that kind of thing. So, and logistically, we might touch on this later, but it's tricky working with schools because there's a lot of different sessions, there's a lot of different, beginning times, ending times. But when we were doing it at this headquarters, it was like, okay, it's 3 to 5 or whatever, 3 to 4:30 every day at this spot. It's all there. And I was like, maybe I'm going to transition out of schools and just do the headquarters, and then make a headquarters in some of these other cities. Irvine has a headquarters, Long Beach, Huntington has a container, and just run everything there, which worked great when parents weren't back to work full time either. They were working from home. So it was easy for them to get their over to our classes. As soon as things kind of started to change, slowly but surely, we cut it down. Instead of going 6 days a week, it's okay, now we're 4 days a week. Now we're like 3 days a week. Now we're 2 days a week. So like, okay, let's figure back out, get reoriented back to the school. So we transitioned back. So now we're doing a little bit of programming there, but most of it, throughout the school year is just right at schools.
Okay. So there's a few questions about dealing with the school and school funding. So let's clarify that you're paid by parents, not the school. Is there any exchange of funding with the school? Do you have to pay them to borrow their blacktop or their facility at all? Or
so traditionally it's always been pay to play. So optional for the kids to sign up. Parents could play if they want and do any kind of after school activity. In the last couple of years, though, there's actually funding through the state for it's called ELOP funding. So certain districts actually get funding to have vendors come in and do programs.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're doing that in Huntington Beach, and we're doing that a little bit in Long Beach. But in Huntington Beach, we're doing like all their elementary schools there through this ELOP funding. But for most of it, though, it's pay to play. Some of the schools, depending if you're with a private school or a public school, some of the schools will just happy to have you there, and they don't charge even a permit fee or anything. They just want kids to be active and doing stuff,
That's great.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Some of the schools will take a percentage, Parks and Rec, like for a summer camp, they take a percentage. So it's kind of all over the place, but for the most part, like, it's just the traditional after school play. They sign up through our website. And for the Parks and Rec, it's different. It goes through Parks and Rec, and then they end up paying us down the road.
So it sounds like there's several avenues in which you can you can participate and build
Yeah.
your business around after school sports. How did you develop, different theme, how did you develop your culture? You have a very cool, hip, but a very collaborative, the people that you have staffing the camps, and you're there, but you can't be at all the schools all at the same afternoon. So you have a variety of staff that you call on. They
Mhm.
all seem to be very in tune with kids and the level that they're at, because they're younger kids. How
Yeah.
did you develop this culture and this very collaborative, um, attentive culture that you have as part of your business?
Yeah. So through the interview process, I just tried to, I'm not looking for the best skater, so there's a lot of skateboarders out there. A lot of them just, they're looking for a job and they just want to go skateboarding. But, I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for more of the mentor type, so I'm looking for enthusiasm, passion, those kinds of things. So a lot of it's just through the hiring process. I get a good feel of their personality, and get a feeling, and I'll have them, show up to a class and just kind of watch and see how they interact with the kids, and I'll get a really good feeling of how they're going to be working with the group. And then I don't hire. So there's the manager positions. The managers actually drive the skate parks, but I will never hire somebody at that position. The only way they get to move up to that position is by working with me. So they, some have worked with me for 2 years, as a helper before they've proven themselves to be responsible. And then also they pretty much have to have, the 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 ability to really engage with a group and keep them engaged. That's like the number one thing I'm looking for. Like when you're there, are you there with the kids? Are you present with the kids? Are you on your phone? Because that's not going to work, So they have to have those things, but then they also have to prove that they're really organized and structured.
Mm.
So the only way that I found, you could ask someone, are you an organized person? They're going to say, yeah, I'm extremely organized, but they have to just prove it. So, I'm not expecting anyone to be perfect, but, a lot of parents are using us for daycare, especially in the summer. They need to drop their kids off and they need to go to work, so we have to be there. We can't just be like, oh, we're 30 minutes late. No, we got to be.
Right.
So that just working with them for, several months, you could really figure out, okay, can this person handle just the little things like that? And then from day one, with the kids, I, for example, I'll have the coaches make a nickname for themselves. A lot of the kids get nicknames. So I'm like, kids, you get to pick a nickname for the coach. So right from the beginning, we're keeping it fun and light. We're not trying to have like the next pro skateboarder out there. If they want to do that stuff down the road, great. But what our whole thing is about fun, and just being it for everybody. So everybody kind of knows. I try to set the tone for that just by being silly with the kids and goofy with the kids and the nicknames and all this stuff. So they see that, and if somebody was to, watch me, do the training with them, they might think, I don't know, like I maybe, I'm not into something like that. So if they like what they see and they like the fun and they like the nicknames and they're feeling it, then they'll want to continue working. And then they might just be like, oh, this doesn't seem right fit for me, and they might be out, which is great. It's not a fit for either one of us. So I would say that's how we make it like that fun.
How do you keep that going after so many years of running this so successfully? Because, um, it's a lot of high energy and a lot of attention
Yeah.
over a long period of time. How do you keep it going?
Yeah, it's just love for skateboarding and
Okay.
love for being around kids. You got to find really, when you get into your flow state, you know if you're constantly looking at your clock,
Yeah.
when's my shift over, when am I going to get out of here, then you're not in the right path. So
Yeah.
like every summer, the after school programs are great too, but every summer I feel like I'm going to summer camp. I look forward to it because you're out there with the kids, you're outdoors, you're having fun. So that's what kind of going back to the beginning of how, you got to love what you're doing. So I'm a big believer in that. I think you could get away with, having maybe a job that you don't necessarily love. You could find your passions and your hobbies and do that, after work or on the weekend.
Right.
That's fine too. I did that when
Right.
I was doing the home loans, but if you're lucky enough to have both, even better. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So one of the challenges with running a business is growth, because growth can be risky, growth can be scary. If you overexpand too quickly, it can be a financial drain. And it looks like you not only have the South Bay, Long Beach, Huntington Beach area, it looks like you've expanded beyond this. Tell us a little bit about how you've grown it, and even into Northern California. How did you grow it? What was that process like um, over time without feeling like, oh my gosh, what if this doesn't pan out, or these schools are new, or I'm not known as well in Northern California? How did you manage it, the growth?
Yeah. So going back into, for me, I, when I try to make a move, I gotta make sure I'm working with that person for a while. So like right now, there's a demand for more skate parks, even right here where I am, but I don't have the right staff in place at the moment. So I kind of just waiting to see how the current staff pans out. So after several months or a year, when I'm working with somebody,
Mhm.
then I'll be like, okay, let's explore of going into the next position and running an actual mobile skate park. So that's kind of what happened with the Northern California situation. So I had a college student here at Cal State Long Beach who he was actually just working as a helper with me,
Mhm.
and he loved skateboarding. And this guy, usually I always like joke around and I'm like, I've been doing this skateboarding the longest, so like I could run it so smooth and the kids love me, all that stuff. But this guy was like the best. Like
Oh,
people just
okay.
love this guy. His name was Prescott. And Prescott was like, I love this business so much, but like I just got my degree, and like I'm gonna be like I'm gonna move back to. He's from like the San Jose area, and he's like, I'm just gonna start a career. I'm gonna move back home and start a career. And he kind of joked around and was like, hey, but we could do skate dogs up there if you're ever interested. And I was like, are you serious? And he was like, yeah, let's talk about it. So we ended up 6 months later launching a mobile skate park up there. So it was doing great. He ran it for several years. He We were getting to the point where he was going to hire another helper to start, because he had somebody that was doing great over there. It was like a year or two, and that person was going to start another skate park over there under his guidance. But then COVID hit, and then
Okay.
got pretty crazy up there, especially in Northern California. They're even more restrictive.
Okay.
Um, and then he got engaged, and his fiance wanted to go to law school, and they wanted Northern California is even more expensive to live than Southern California, and so they just relocated out of the state. So so
Oh, shoot.
so, so now I was like, okay, I gotta either close up shop because I have a lot of demand down here and bring the mobile skate park over here, or one of the guys that was managing down here, who was doing great running his own skate park here,
Mhm.
I presented it to him. I was like, hey, would you be interested in taking over the Northern California branch? Kind of just as a long shot. And he said, sure. And so he relocated up to NorCal, and he's been there for a few years. Um, and so it's been going great there. So yeah.
That's fantastic. It sounds like it's a lot of relationship. I mean,
Yeah.
it's based on a lot of the relationship you've built with your partners over time, and you've adapted to change as you get curveballs.
Mhm.
Life situations change, graduations,
Yeah.
COVID, cost of living. Fantastic. Um, okay, I'm just looking at the questions here and seeing if there's anything that we haven't talked about yet. Um, Leonardo asks about how much did it cost to start? So you were in a business unrelated, but a business being very profitable up until the recession hit. Um, do you just use that capital to launch this business?
Yeah. So initially, it really wasn't a big investment. Um, I, I bought, I would say maybe 5 ramps, so, um, that, is probably under $1,000, or, something like that, maybe $1,500. And then, this I only had one helper, so it was me, and I had one helper. So that was an expense. But the nice thing about this business being mobile and not having a brick and mortar is, if the business is down, you just bring on coaches for how many, students are signing up. So it was to pay for that coach because of the registrations through that first summer camp. So there was that. There's, to get organized as a business. I was already paid the expenses to, to start the corporation and that kind of stuff, which is, it's not that expensive. You have to pay like $800 to the state. And I think I hired someone to help, actually form that stuff's not a big barrier to entry. And then the kids had to bring their own equipment, so like even then I didn't even have any loaner gear. Now we have some loaner gears and stuff like that. But for them, they had to bring their own skateboards, and so I didn't have to really invest in that. And like I said, I was using my mom's SUV at the time. So to start it, it wasn't a big investment. I ended up buying an SUV, which I also used for personal, initially. When I start a mobile skate park now, it's a little bit different. I'll usually buy a used van, a couple of years used van, and then I'll put the wrap on it and stuff like that and buy all the equipment. But even when I buy it, it's just, $400 a month, more or less, because I don't buy them outright.
Right.
So relatively low, cost to enter.
Low risk, low cost. Not having a physical location probably helped a lot. And variable cost of labor, you bring them on when you have the business, and that's when they have hours to work. And so you don't have that as a drain.
Right.
What's your favorite part of owning and running this business? If there was one piece where you said, I just love this part of it, what is that part?
So yeah, my favorite part is actually being out there with the kids.
Yeah.
So a lot of people I know, I've been doing this for 17 years now, and a lot of the people my age, they're just running the operations side, but they're not still teaching the classes. But for me, that's the best part. So, being out there with the kids is super fun. We also do, so I mentioned like the promotional, small demos that we do, but we also do like a bigger demo that I'll bring out sponsored skateboarders or semi-pro skateboarders to do a show. And sometimes this could be another revenue source through PTAs. They pay for assemblies to entertain the students. And so those are super fun, because now you got maybe, the whole school goes to those. So some of these times we've had 800, 1,000 kids out there for these shows, and we play music, and I hire an announcer, and they're just so much fun, because you could just see the kids' faces light up, when they're seeing these tricks, because a lot of these kids have never seen skateboarding before or any tricks like that. So they think it's like a magic trick when someone does like an ollie over a principal or something like that. So
I think it's a magic trick.
Yeah. So I'm in the back, just I play the music. So I'm in the back playing the music. I just take it all in and look at all the kids' faces and stuff. And then I look at the teachers too, and I play like all this old 80s music. So the teachers are in the back, like dancing and stuff like that. So yeah, the favorite part is just being out there, with the kids, and those demos are super fun. But, there's not a ton of those demos. We maybe do, a handful of those a whole year.
Okay. Yeah. Good to know. So that's the best part. What's the most challenging or less attractive to you? Like, what part do you like, oh, this is kind of not my favorite?
The two challenging parts, I would say, well, one, like I mentioned, when we were running all the programs at our headquarters, was really easy, but it could be extremely challenging logistically at the schools, because they're all on a different schedule. They all have different bell schedules. And there's all these different procedures for getting on the campus, off the campus. So if it's a school that we've been at for years, it's kind of easy, especially if it's the same coaches, it's pretty smooth. But if it's a new school, it's like, you got to park here, you got to call this number, you got to go in there. Oh, it's a bell time is 2:10, but you got to meet the kids over here and walk them over there. So that stuff could be a challenge. It's just a lot of details that you have to really hammer in and make sure everyone's on board. The biggest challenge, I would say, and this is not only for me, but this is anyone in this industry, I would say, is giving the staff enough hours to keep them busy and not looking for another job. So people love working here because it's a fun job. It's skateboarding, especially if they're skateboarders, they love it. But they also, it has to be the right fit, because if you're especially at that helper position and you're living on your own, it's not going to pay the bills on its own. Unless something you might, if you're, especially if you're doing like double camps, you could do okay. But when you're working at a school and you can only offer somebody 2 hours, of time a day, you're only working 10 hours a week, that could be a struggle. So it's trying to find that right fit, that someone who's, maybe they're a college student or maybe they're an Uber driver, or maybe they're still living at home or high school. So it's you could place them, but it's a little tricky, finding someone who wants that like limited time. And then that just goes along with the turnover rate, because now I've been pretty good lately at just really letting them know like what it's going to be like. And if I get feeling like they're just going to look for this until they can find that other full-time job or more hours, I'll just be like, it's not a good fit. So it's like, I really got to make sure you know what you're getting yourself into, because the training and getting them up to speed is, it's a lot of time and effort. So I want to make sure if I hire someone that they're going to stay 6 months, a year, 2 years, not a month or two, So the turnover's been pretty tricky for the manager position. When they're running the park, they get more hourly, so that's been a bit more stable.
Okay.
But even then, it could be challenging too. It's just, so a couple of things that I'm looking into, I've tried this before COVID. I'm going to try it again, is some preschool programs, because preschools, they offer classes during school hours. So we could potentially teach a class at 11 a.m. and still make our after school at an elementary school at, whatever, 2:30 or 3.
Sure.
Being creative and finding ways like that to try to keep the staff busy and the downtime.
Right. Yeah, that's a logistical challenge to be working with all the schools and all the rules and all the timing. You must have a master spreadsheet or something to keep it all straight.
Yeah, I think you were gonna ask about like the routines and stuff like that. So that I lists, I have several lists that every Monday morning, that's my ritual, is I look what's happening that week. So like, what do I have on all, because it's not just my calendar, it's all my other skate parks calendars too, because I constantly got to keep them updated, what's starting and what's ending. So Monday morning, I get the whole week. I have the whole week planned out, and then I like to use paper lists. So I'll just have a paper list of going. I just cross things out as I go, and then yeah, I just make everything, like for me, I just make everything with check boxes. So if I have a new school, I have just a checklist. Coaches check. I told them, I sent the roster, check. I put this on the payroll, check. So everything's just checklisted for me. I kind of got that from the mortgage business, because when you're doing home loans, everything's got to be, there's so much. I mean, when you're doing a notary, backup papers this thick, so there's tons of things that you have to be detailed oriented with. So
a lot of steps.
Yeah, so that's like my routine for staying organized.
Yeah, that's great. I just have one final question, and we're almost at 2:00. Is thinking back to when you started this and you were dabbling in this and trying to figure it out, and you were going to the city, and then you had the lead of Los Alamitos, and then maybe a school. In retrospect, did we say 12? Has it been 12 years? How many years did we say? Did you say 17?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. 17. If you go back 15, 17 years, what would you have told yourself about how this was going to pan out?
Yeah, I think I would have said, just continue to grind away. That there's going to be times when you do want to quit, you do want to give up, you want to find that, that full-time job with the benefits and, like the guaranteed, but, just believe in yourself, keep at it, don't give up, and just, keep grinding away, because, I just a true believer in, what you put in is what you get out. So in this business, if you work hard at something, it pays off. Whereas, it's just not it wouldn't be a right fit for me. Like if you're stuck in a job where you're working super hard, but you're still getting paid the same amount, that's not kind of guy I am. So I want to know that if I made it, it's because, I put in the work, and if I failed, it was on me. So I would just say, just keep at it.
Go for Lions. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, this has been fantastic. I've totally enjoyed having a conversation with you and sharing it with our students out there that are interested in starting their own business. Thank you. I appreciate all the wisdom and advice, and your stories. There's a lot of fun to listen to. I encourage students to go onto their website, skatedog.com, so that you can see how he has his website set up, how he's organized. There's a sweet little video, 2 or 3 minute video on there that gives you a very clear idea of what this looks like. The picture tells 1,000 words. Also, following him on Instagram is a lot of fun. I do that occasionally, and thank you. I appreciate your time today, Adam.
Thank you, Melissa, too. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, fun.
Thanks, everybody, for watching.
Yeah, thank you. And I want students to know that our spring schedule is coming out. Registration is starting very soon. There's a few classes on the schedule for the spring, and there's going to be a few new entrepreneurial classes scheduled that are going to be offered first this fall. So that's going to be fall 2025. There's going to be a social entrepreneur class that we haven't ever offered before, as well as some new social media classes. So those were just written and will be approved by the fall semester. And I just want students to know that that's what's coming down the pike next. Thanks for joining us. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye, Adam.